Can you just start by introducing yourselves?
Ladies first.
Okay, I am Karen Brown, and I'm married to William Taylor, and I am the eldest of the bunch. I was the first grandchild.
I'm Robert Turpin. I am the youngest of the bunch. And I am, well, I guess I am the youngest grandchild.
That's right.
And my name is Barksdale Higgins, and I'm the middle grandchild to Julia Williams Brown.
All right. Can you all tell me a little bit about your grandmother, Julia Brown, and her childhood? Where did she grow up? Where did she go to school?
All right. From what I could find on Ancestry, I believe they lived in Newport News for a while and in New Kent. And that was about all I could find. Do you have any information?
Just from talking to her. She was born in New Kent County, and her parents were Edward Thomas Williams and Nellie Atkins Williams. And she had a younger sister that she was about 18 months to 2 years old in Merthyr. And so they moved soon after my Aunt Merthyr was born to New Kent. I'm sorry, to Newport News. Mm-hmm. And they were there, I guess, a couple of years, and then they moved to Richmond. And I think to put some context into it, my grandmother, she was born in 1916. It was May the 12th, 1916. And during that time, certainly during that era, if most people who are familiar with history will know that 1919 was a red summer where you saw a lot of race riots and incidents where a lot of African Americans were being suppressed and also experiencing lynchings as well. So their father, in an effort to try to secure and make sure his family was safe, he moved him to Newport News. Then after that, he moved him to Richmond. So that was sort of why they were moving back and forth between those communities like that.
So about how old was she when they moved to Richmond? Do you know?
I guess around 5,
okay.
4 or 5, something like that. I'm just remembering from what she had shared with me. Yeah.
Do you know if they lived in a particular neighborhood or area of the city?
She lived in Churchill.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and she attended George Mason Elementary School and then Armstrong.
Great.
Because really at the time, Armstrong was the only high school in Richmond for African Americans.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Do you know anything about why she chose to become a librarian?
Sure, I can speak to that. At the time, our grandmother, she was attending or taking classes from an adult education program at Vanderbilt. And again, to give you some context, Vanderbilt was a private Catholic school for African Americans during the time that, really the school was started, I think, in the late 19th century. And it was a part of St. Joseph's Catholic Church. It was located right over here on First Street between Jackson and Duval Streets. Mm-hmm. And so she was attending again, an adult education program then. And by this time, she had children. She had each of our parents. So she had a family. Okay. And she was taking a class there. And Miss Belle Hightower, who had been hired as the main librarian for the newly established African American library, she was looking for librarians to hire. And so she was a member of St. Joseph's Catholic Church. She went over there to the church and talked to the father there because she was a member there, and she was asking for the top students in their education program. And so they had identified 2 or 3 top students in their class. My grandmother, she was one of them. And so after going through the interview process, that's how she was selected to be a librarian at Rosa D. Bell's library branch.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Great. Do you know if that initial position, was it full-time, part-time?
Full-time.
Okay.
I believe it was full-time.
Full-time. All right. And was it daytime hours? I've heard sometimes that they were open during the evenings. Do you know anything about what her schedule looked like
From
during
what I
those
understand,
days?
they would open in the morning, and then they would take like a lunch break. And I don't know how long that lunch break was. Mm-hmm. And they would close the library for the lunch break. And then they would come back for that afternoon session. I think they would get off like around 7, maybe 8 o'clock. Okay. Something like that.
I remember going there.
Yeah.
And she was always cheerful and happy, and You know, Miss Hightower, I'm glad you gave me her first name. I remembered Miss Hightower. Yeah, I would go to the library to visit.
Mm-hmm. Do you remember any programs that they had? Any? I've seen pictures of the branch, and I've seen that there were displays that they did on rolling bulletin boards. And it looks like sometimes they had the children doing crafts in there. So do you remember any of those kinds of activities?
I don't remember doing crafts. I just know whenever we went, I was excited. Miss Hightower, you know, I knew the people that Granny worked with, and I would see her, and they were always gracious, and it was a nice place to visit, you know.
Yeah.
See, the only, unfortunately for him, he wasn't born at that time. It was just the two of us.
You know, when I was young, I wanted to be their age. Now, sitting here in 2024, I'm kind of good.
Yeah,
that,
you're on the good side of it.
Absolutely.
Do you have any memories of going there?
I remember going down to visit the library because the library was actually located in the middle of the block between First and Adams Street. And actually, that was the Deal House, and the city purchased it, I believe, from the Colored Women's League, which Maggie Walker was a part of.
Right.
And so it was located in the middle of the block. It was a house, and the city purchased it. Well, I'm not sure what the organization used it for, but once the city took purchase of it, they turned it into a library.
Yeah. Do you know what kind of work she did at the library? Were there any specific tasks that you remember her doing?
She did everything.
Yeah.
She learned to open and close, and if Miss Hightower was absent, she filled in and she ran the library. That I do know.
Yeah, I've seen pictures of them running story times, and it looks like it was popular. They had a big crowd.
Well, bear in mind, they were going to have a large crowd in it because it's the only library that served the African American community. I know my mom said that students that had assignments at either Armstrong, which was located on Lee Street, a couple of blocks around the corner, then Booker T, which was again on Lee Street, just down the block and around the corner. If they got assignments, they go straight to the library after school. And so there was always at least children, certainly, there in the library working on school assignments and things, because this was well before the internet and Google and things of that nature. So when kids had work to do and, you know, they couldn't get that information at their own school library, they would be there at Rosa D. Bowser.
As I've asked around, I've also came up with a couple other names. Mr. Josiah Robinson was a librarian as well. And what was interesting to me is a gentleman, Mr. Alexander Terry, who served as a custodian. However, he was also responsible for walking back and forth between the Bowser branch and the main branch, as far as if someone wanted to check out a book that was not available at the Bowser location, they would come to the main library, or he would walk back and forth to the main library to bring those books back and forth.
That's a long walk.
Yes, yes.
We have a great picture of him with his cart of books
Okay,
when
okay.
there were war rations on rubber.
Okay.
And so it's a wooden cart that he is pulling all the way to the library
Wow.
to move books back and forth.
Wow.
But yeah, I'm familiar with his name.
Absolutely.
That's great. Thank you.
Then another woman that served too was Ann Abraham, who substituted for the librarians. If Mr. Robinson or our grandmother, you know, had to take time off, she was she was certainly there during the summer months because she was a school librarian.
Okay.
So when she had that time off during the summer, she worked at the library as well.
Can I ask how you all came across these names? Was it speaking to other people? Was it online research, newspaper research?
Online research for me.
Okay.
Asking my mother a couple questions and looking online as well.
And Miss Hightail I knew, and Mr. Terry I knew because I remember as a child going to the library. I didn't remember Mr. Robinson so much, but I did. I remember and I knew Miss Hightail, and as well as Mr. Terry, and then the other two workers, staff there. My mom shared that information with me as well as his mom. Yeah.
This is just a personal curiosity question. When you went to the library, do you remember it being more of a quiet space for people to get work done, or was it a little bit more boisterous with kids coming in to spend time there?
I think it was a quiet place. You know, people weren't all gathered together in one area, and people got the job done. You know, it was a business. So you went there to learn, to do what you needed to do, and would leave, you know, basically.
I remember being real quiet as
Yeah.
well. 'Cause my grandmother, she was no nonsense.
Yeah.
Right
So
about
she
that.
wasn't going to allow people, you know, kids or anybody to be playing or, you know, really a lot of socializing. You know, they could talk if they were doing work, but it was pretty quiet in there, yeah, from what I could remember.
And it's funny you asked that question because I've thought about that over the past years as I've been enrolled in school. My grandmother would probably not like the current way the libraries operate, which is phenomenal. There wasn't a lot of collaboration or group work. You know, you pretty much got to a table, you did your work independently, and it was quiet. And it was, you know, if you made noise, they would let you know and shh. But now it's just evolved into a different experience as far as being in the library.
Yeah.
But great question.
Doesn't surprise me that it was quiet
Yeah,
back
that's
then.
great question.
Can you describe the layout of anything you remember about the branch? What it looked like in the inside?
He had two big doors when you entered. I remember the doors were really large, had tall, high ceilings, and Granny worked off to the right, if I'm not mistaken.
That desk, yeah, they had a desk, and right behind the desk there were some stairs, a staircase that went upstairs, because they had, I don't remember ever going upstairs, but they had some rooms, a meeting space or something upstairs. Actually, from what I've been told by my mom, they would have classes for, or they offered that space to Richmond Public Schools for some programs that they were running as well.
Okay.
So,
Interesting. Can you talk a little bit about when the Bowser branch transitioned into the East End branch and anything you remember about that time period?
Well, I'll speak.
yeah, that's,
You have a picture of me dedicating the library in 1967, I believe, or 65. And that happened by happenstance. They had formalized their program and they realized they didn't have anybody to cut the ribbon. So I had less than 24 hours notice that I was going to be the person cutting the ribbon.
Oh, goodness.
And whatever Granny said, it goes, you know. Granny said, you're going to cut the ribbon. And my mom got me ready in 24 hours to do that. I remember it was pretty loaded with a mixed group of people. And I was a little nervous, but I did what I was supposed to do. And let's see, what else can I share? I can share how the library was used. The Alliance for Black Social Welfare had a project with the students and children in Creighton Court. And with them, we would get the students, it was either once a month or every 2 weeks, and we would carry them to the library to expose them to books and that kind of thing. And I have a picture somewhere, I don't know where it is, couldn't put my hands on it, of me sitting down on the carpet reading to a group of children. But that was one of their service projects, and that was one of the initial things that they did once they opened.
That's great.
And I remember the bookmobile.
Oh, yeah.
And it was named Nellie Belly, I found out from looking on the internet.
Mhm, Nellie Bell. Yeah.
So I wonder if Granny named it. well, our great grandmother's name was Nellie.
Yeah.
but I don't
So,
think she was.
you know, it made me wonder.
Yeah. Do you know overall how many years she worked at the Bowser branch and how many years at East End?
She started working, well, she was hired and started working in 1945,
Okay.
and then she retired in 1981.
Okay.
So it was about 30-something years, 31 years or something like that, her entire span of working at the library. So,
Yeah. That's great. Do you know if she worked on the bookmobile?
Yes.
Yes. Did she drive it, or was she just in the back with the books?
She was a librarian assigned to work with the students who came on to check out books I
Okay.
have questions about. And from what I can remember, she was assigned to work once a month on a weekend, like a Saturday or a Sunday. And I think that schedule rotated
Right.
among the librarians, and I remember her having to work on the bookmobile, like I said, once a month. Yeah, on the weekend.
My mother told me a lady named Mrs. Leatherman drove the bus. I think she may have been, no, she wasn't, but she drove the bus as far as the bookmobile to the various communities, mostly Churchill.
Okay. And did you all visit the bookmobile?
I remember seeing the bookmobile and just saying, "Hi, Granny." You know?
That makes it more special for
Yes,
sure when you know
yes, indeed.
who's on the bookmobile. Yeah, let's get into some of the photographs that you brought today, because I have a feeling that more details will come out as we look at some of these photos. So here's a picture. I'll just hold it up in the corner, that way we know which one we're talking about. So we can go through each photo, and feel free to talk about anything that pops into your mind as you see these photographs.
Only thing I can tell you, that's the interior of the library and exactly what was going on, or I can't speak to that. I really don't know.
That was the main desk area. Yeah.
I think she's sitting at a table there.
Oh, okay.
This is a good one.
That was actually at the back of the building, and they had like a backyard. So she's standing there with a young lady that she had some type of friend of hers that was attending there at the library at the time. I don't think she worked there, because she looks to be like a teenager actually, or maybe a college age student. But they were in the backyard, behind the back of the library in that picture right there.
Were children free to go in the backyard, or was that more of a restricted space?
That I really don't know. I can't say for sure because I don't know. I guess those are some of the school-age children that would come to avail themselves of the services there at the library.
And it's interesting, they're all dressed very nicely. So,
I've noticed that in photos that I've seen at the library.
Yeah.
Is that how you remember dressing when you went? Dressed nicely?
I'm not sure. I mean, we were presentable.
And this picture has to do with a teenage reading club that met at the library.
And I'm gonna let Trey speak to this one because
Yeah.
you know who that is on the end.
She looks familiar. No, the young lady on the left end is my mother. So it looks like she was involved with a reading club, and they probably met there regularly. Yeah, it looks like my mom and some other young ladies in the reading club.
And then we have this great portrait here that mirrors the background that we have today.
Yes, absolutely. I can remember, we used to visit a lot on Saturday evenings, and she would want me to watch Lawrence Welk. And most of the time she had a book.
Yeah.
Yeah, she was a voracious reader. I mean, she would have at least 1 or 2 books there on the coffee table, or on the couch somewhere. And if she wasn't looking, she didn't look at a whole lot of TV during the day, but like Katie was saying, on Saturday nights, we were going to look at Lawrence Welk for sure. And
I experienced that as well.
Yeah. If she wasn't, doing that, she was reading, or maybe back in the kitchen cooking something. Most of the time, you're going to see her with a book reading.
Did she instill that love of reading in you all and your parents?
I believe so.
Yes.
Yeah. All right, so here's a picture where we're starting to get into the East End Library.
Yeah, that's her grandmother on the far
Oh, Miss
left.
Benson,
Yeah, they're there at the desk. I remember that.
How seamless was the transition from the Bowser branch to the East End branch? I know there was a very slight overlap, I believe, but it happened very close together. So do you remember anything about maybe a time when they both existed, or what it was like to have to go over to East End rather than the Bowser branch?
I was so young, I don't. It was funny. because I knew she worked at the library, and I always, for me, it was always, she was down here on, Clay Street. Then all of a sudden, it was like that, she was over in East End. But in terms of the transition, the process, whether it was that, with me being so young, I can't I don't know much about that.
Yeah.
Ironically enough, when they closed Rosa Bowser as a library, stayed closed for a short period of time, and the Richmond Public Schools used it as an alternative school.
Mm-hmm.
And my father was the lead teacher or in charge of the alternative school.
Oh,
So I still
wow.
got to go in there.
Uh-huh. What was that curriculum like?
It was, from what I can remember, it was a mixed age group. And they were children that had some behavior problems.
Mm-hmm.
So they had teachers that dealt with them on their grade level.
Mm-hmm. Interesting. All right, we have another picture from the East End Library.
That's one of the librarians. Excuse me, but I don't know who she. I couldn't tell you her name.
Do you remember your grandmother ever making any comments about whether she preferred working at the Bowser branch versus the East End branch?
Not really.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I think she was just excited to be a part of opening a new branch
Mhm.
and starting a new beginning in a
Yeah.
new community.
Yeah.
The one thing, she appeared to enjoy her work and her job. I never heard her complain about the fact of, having to go to work or being a library. She really sort of gravitated, embraced it, and she appeared to really enjoy being a librarian.
Mm-hmm.
And they seem to have a good team at the East End branch. They really work well together.
And the same was true actually with the staff at the Bowser branch as well. When my grandmother, her husband, my grandfather, and then their children, when they purchased a house down in Maymount. And when they moved to that house, Ms. Hightower and the staff, they actually came after work one day down to the house in Maymount for a housewarming and presented them with, gave them a present from the library, or at least from the staff and the
Yeah.
university. So they were a close team, and they were, I guess, like family, and they really stuck by each other and supported each other, which was good.
That's good to know.
Yeah.
Then we have the newspaper article with your beautiful photo. We can't leave that one out with the ribbon cutting.
Yeah, that was fun. When Granny said do something, you did it. And I did it to the best of my ability. And you can see people were standing all around. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. And then I know you brought some photos with you today. Are there any that you want to take a look at and discuss?
Let me look back and see if there's anything. Let's see. I told you all about the bookmobile because I remember that and walking children up there to read. Nothing in particular. I share them with them.
Yeah.
Nothing sticks out.
Another question. Do you remember anything about the book selection at the Bowser branch? And what kind of books were on the shelves? Anything in particular that you liked to read around that time?
For me,
I know that might be asking a lot to remember that far back.
Again, I was real young.
Uh-huh.
Nursery school, and maybe first and second grade. But the one thing that I enjoyed doing, because I used to like to draw, I would grab a book from the children's section and then go to one of the tables, and Granny, she would give me a sheet of paper, and then I would sit there and draw whatever pictures I saw in the book.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
That's sweet.
yeah. So that's the only thing I remember in terms of, the selection of books that were present.
Mm-hmm.
It was just a nice place to go, and I look forward to going when we would take the children and read to them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Is there anything else that you want people to know about your grandmother and her work at the libraries?
One thing, really, that's a question that you could really, I could come up with several different answers and responses to, but the one thing I guess that I would like to share, I would like to leave in terms of our grandmother, she not unlike Rosa D. Balzer, who was the namesake for the library on Clay Street. They both were proponents and advocates for education. And our grandmother was the same way. She really believed that that was a vehicle and a tool to achieve success, particularly for people in the black community. And that was, you know, not unique to our grandmother and that family. Most families during that time, African American families, felt that, you know, to get an education would be a step toward achieving success and being able to attain the things that you wanted to do in life. And our grandmother was no different. And she certainly emphasized that with her children, and even with us, her grandchildren, but I know with her children in particular, because I know my mom, once she graduated from high school, she wasn't really particularly interested in going to college. She was thinking about just, you know, going out, getting a job and working. And our grandmother told her, well, look, try it for a year and see, you know, see how you feel about it. And that was her way of sort of getting my mom to go to college. And once my mom got there, she was fine. She enjoyed it. You know, she enjoyed it. She made friends there. You know, the work was fine. And she completed her college, got her college degree and became a school teacher. But, you know, parents know their children. And so she knew how to sort of manipulate my mom so that she would go to college. Because my mom wasn't interested in going to college. And so, you know, she really knew and understood the need for going beyond just having a regular public education. She saw that as a means to being able to go out and achieve success in life. And so our grandmother, she was bright. She was an astute person, and she really was the type of person who I would say was aware of the moments in time in history in which they lived, to the extent our grandfather, he passed away on a Sunday. It was April 30th, 1967. I remember it almost like it was yesterday. And at the time, the cemeteries in Richmond were still segregated. We had, you know, cemeteries for the blacks and then the cemeteries for the whites. And so, like I said, our grandfather, he had passed away. And so our grandmother approached the undertaker, Douglas Price, and she said, look, see if we can get my husband buried at Riverview Cemetery. Riverview was a white cemetery that was not even a mile away from where they lived. And so they contacted the city. I'm not sure which department they spoke to. Today it's Rec and Parks who's over the city cemeteries, but again, I don't know what it was back in 1967. But they approved it. And so our grandfather, he died on a Sunday, and by that Wednesday, we were having funeral services, and he is being interned and buried right there in Riverview. So he's actually the first African American to ever be buried in a Richmond City cemetery.
Wow.
And so again, she, you know, she wasn't the type of person that you were going to see, you know, at civil rights marches or out protesting. She wasn't that type of person, but she was aware of the moments and times in which we live and saw opportunities to take advantage to not so much advance the cause, but to help her family to achieve and be able to have the same measure of success as anyone else out here. So she was astute, she really was.
I also remember from that incident that a local radio station had people calling in, and we were listening to the negative comments that were being made about having an African American being buried at Riverview, and we had plainclothes policemen out there as we entered in. That I remember as a child.
Wow.
Yeah, because I was 7 at the time.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I was about 8.
No, you got me.
I'd have you about 18 months.
I thought you had me about more than that. I'm just kidding.
And we'll talk about that later.
Commercial break.
There you go.
But yeah, she was quite astute.
Yeah.
And so that's the one thing that I would share, you know, certainly about our grandmother. And then too, just to leave the one thing that you could take away from the fact that I think that it's important that we share and understand the complete history. the library, the Richmond Public Library system is phenomenal, it really is. And certainly to have been able to evolve and achieve the level of success that it has over these 100 years speaks well. It speaks volumes of not only the people that started, but people like you who are here now to carry on that legacy.
Thank you.
But I think it's important that we realize it wasn't just the socialites and the well-heeled people or politicians who got that started and sewed into that. There were working class people who also contributed as well. It wasn't just one racial group that contributed to the library's success. There were many other ethnicities and racial groups who also played a part, a meaningful part, in the success that the library still achieved and been able to have today. So I just think that it's important that we tell the complete story. And I want to thank you and certainly the Richmond Public Library for giving us the opportunity to share about at least a small part of that our grandmother played.